Big Meech, like, told on somebody to get out, snitched, did anything extra?
No. Let me tell you why. Big Meech paperwork is public records. There is no proof that Big Meech said, hey, bust him, bust him, bust him.
So Taryn Gangster Williams, who did time right alongside Big Meech, is stepping up and calling out 50 Cent's full story, and he's not holding back. Ganga is shutting down the talk about Meech being a snitch, and on top of that, he's spilling on how Meech had the whole prison under his thumb, running things like a straight-up kingpin.
Big Meech, bro, I ain't gonna lie. That man got to that compound, and man, he had some of the guys I would never think that would get EMF, ENT on the left side of his neck, man.
Every prisoner displayed love and respect without asking any questions, which drastically changes the course of events because people are now ignoring everything that 50 has said about me being a rat. What's the truth, though? Was Meech actually working with the feds, or is 50? Meech and Rick Ross left 50 looking goofy, so I'm simply making fun of them. What specifically did Gangsta disclose regarding Meech's movements within those walls? Let's begin. An old interview has just surfaced.
Big Meech, bro, I ain't gonna lie. That man got to that compound, and man, he had some of the guys I would never think that would get EMF, ENT on the left side of his neck, man. It was tattooed, and he made it clear. He said, listen, I'm not giving nobody no connect. I'm not hooking nobody up with nothing. I'm not doing nothing when y'all go home. So, in other words, people try to get with him just for the games, for me to let it be known, look, I ain't got nothing.
One where New Orleans street legend Terrence Gangsta Williams spoke on what life was like with Big Meech inside Gangsta, laid it all out. Meech wasn't just another inmate. He was the guy, according to Gangsta. Meech had the type of pull where every man inside followed his lead like he was the mayor of the whole prison block, and the craziest part, Meech didn't even have to flex. That influence came natural. Gangsta even said Meech was so connected he could get his hands on the keys to any yard he touched, like the whole prison system was his backyard. But hold up, here's where it gets wild.
There when it was changed, and they caught it. Okay, we're gonna do this party. We're gonna have the tigers and the lions and you know what I'm saying, elephants and stuff. All like we never seen that type of stuff. Like you can say what you want to say, you know what I'm saying, about, but that type of stuff you only seen in movies, and you didn't even see that in movies. Yeah.
Feds locked him down. Meech had the opportunity to rise to prominence and revert to the rich lifestyle, but instead he stayed put and served his time like a man. We'll go into more detail about the entire escape narrative in a moment, but first let's clarify. Everyone is aware that 50 has been out there accusing Meech of being a federal informant and has been using Meech's former associate Tammy Callens to support those charges. However, when Gangsta was directly questioned about what Tammy stated, Gangsta made it obvious.
Cohen is a government informant. So they told me, he says, you know what that's about? And I said, no. He said, well, you threatened a government informant, and that's a federal offense.
He doesn't believe for 1 second that Meech cooperated with the feds. On top of everything, Gangsta even threw some shade at industry folks like 50 Cent, calling them straight up hypocrites for deciding who they want to label a snitch depending on who they like or who they beefing with.
With a 27-year sentence based on Demetrius Flannery, and you all know it's Big Meech, and Tammy Collins, known in the paperwork as CS1.
Right.
Confidential source 1. So what Big Meech did was call a third-party cooperation.
If you really want to understand how all this snitch talk even started, you have to go all the way back to the rise and fall of BMF. The legendary empire brought Big Meech to the courtroom, where he was slapped with a 30-year sentence. But here's the twist. There was a real moment when Meech had the chance to disappear, leave the country, and vanish like a ghost, leaving all those charges behind. Instead, Meech stood his ground and faced everything head-on. That move earned him major respect in the streets, but it also laid the groundwork for all the snitching rumors and chaos we're seeing today. But let's rewind. The Black Mafia family wasn't just some street gang. This was a serious criminal organization built from the ground up by Demetrius Big Meech Flannery and Terry Southwest Key Flannery in 1985 in Southwest Detroit. These two weren't just ambitious, they had a direct pipeline to top-tier Mexican cocaine. With that connect, BMF skyrocketed to power and became one of the biggest players in the game. But here's what made them different. They weren't moving weight like everyone else. Their operation was disguised as a family-run car service, making it look like nothing more than a legit business. By the early 2000s, BMF had taken over the streets, the clubs, and even the music industry. They built a glitzy entertainment empire right on top of their drug empire, using it as a front to launder money and flaunt their power. More than 500 members were making moves coast to coast. But with all that power came violence. The first time Meech got shot was back in the 1980s, standing outside a Chinese restaurant, completely unbothered. Then it happened again in 2004, this time outside an Atlanta club, and this one was different. It came after a run-in with Anthony Wolf Jones, the same Wolf who was Diddy's bodyguard. Meech walked away with minor injuries, but Wolf and another man were taken out permanently. But let's be real, BMF was about living big. They had 13 mansions spread across the country, looking like Monopoly pieces. They had fleets of luxury cars that made every street look like a car show. And when it came to jewelry, Meech had Jacob the jeweler on speed dial, making sure he was always the flashiest man in the room. But beyond all the money and power, Meech always said that BMF was built on brotherhood, a family-first type of deal. But here's where things took a turn. Once they reached the top, that brotherhood started to break apart. The love between Meech and Southwest T started crumbling. One moment, they'd be partying, the next, arguing in front of everybody. Things got so bad that Meech started accusing T of skimming money right off the BMF stash. By the time BMF hit its peak, the brothers couldn't even work together anymore. So they split the empire down the middle. Southwest T packed up and moved to Los Angeles to stay locked in with their Mexican suppliers, while Meech took over Atlanta, turning the city into his personal playground. In an attempt to legitimize the empire, Meech made a bold move. He launched BMF Entertainment, hoping to turn his street fame into industry power. And for a while, it worked. His big personality, larger-than-life lifestyle, and commanding energy fit perfectly into hip-hop. But here's the problem. Once the family split, so did the crew. BMF went from being one unstoppable unit to a group of factions at war. That crack in the foundation was all it took for everything to come crashing down. Destined for it at their height, BMF was not only controlling the streets, but also the culture. Without a doubt, BMF was the most popular trend in hip-hop, and all of the big names in the industry wanted a piece of that glory. Diddy people still tell stories about how Meech and his crew would roll 100 deep into the club like it was a parade, shutting down every VIP section they touched once just to make a statement. Meech pulled up and both of his made books right next to Jay-Z's, saying, "Yeah, I'm here and I'm on your level, but..." Jay-Z, T.I., Jeezy, and even 50 Cent himself all popped bottles and partied with Meech like they were family. Meech took flexing to insane heights that night by bringing 2 live white tigers straight into the club. Now, splitting the empire between Meech and Southwest definitely helped BMF spread out, but that same move started cracking their foundation because he couldn't understand how flashy Meech was getting the private jets, the non-stop cameras, the wild parties, and it made him nervous. If you want to talk about legendary BMF stories, you have to mention Meech's jungle-themed birthday bash at Magic City. It was so wild that it's still talked about like some urban myth. Instead of keeping it between them, T began to complain to their family and close friends about Meech's antics. Little did T know that the feds had every word on tape during this entire period. While T was worrying, Meech continued to live like a king or queen, hosting lavish parties that cost millions of dollars and inviting everyone to the city to attend. However, Meech was unaware that some of the guests were actually undercover agents and not just regular police officers. Federal task force after 15 years of nonstop investigation, the feds were prepared to make their move. Armed with over 900 pages of wiretaps, stacks of statements from informants, boxes of financial records, and surveillance logs that tracked Meech from the club to the crib and everywhere in between, they blended into the crowd, tracking every move Meech made and waiting for the right moment to swoop in. When they finally made their move, they came down like a hurricane. Came crashing, the empire Meech constructed in 2005, Big Meech and Southwest were both charged with drug trafficking and racketeering in a massive coordinated takedown that rocked the streets and the rap game. The feds had everything they needed down there, including wiretaps, paper trails, niches, and everything else. While Meech was discovered slipping in Frisco, Texas, and T was apprehended in St. Louis, 150 BMF affiliates were also apprehended. As they formally ended one of the most illustrious street dynasties hip-hop had ever witnessed, The wild part is that BMF knew the storm was coming. Southwest, he was taken first, but Meech actually had a chance to vanish forever. He could have fled to Mexico and started over, but Meech being Meech, he chose to make a brief stop in Miami before arriving in Frisco, where the feds eventually caught up to him. When the feds arrived, they wanted everyone, not just Meech and T. They went after the entire Ferry family, grabbing their father, sister, and even their girlfriends. The feds discovered that the family names were on the titles of the houses and businesses that BMF used to launder their money, which led them to believe they were involved in the conspiracy. When the pressure mounted, the DEA presented a bargain to guilty by association. Meech and T took full responsibility for everything, cut the family loose, and allowed them to live freely without any charges or trials. They did this without hesitation, stood up for their family, and owned every part of the business. This is how the Black Mafia family was hit with the Continuing Criminal Enterprise Statute, which is one of the most serious charges you can encounter in the game. Both brothers were found guilty, with 30-year federal sentences, but here's the twist. In 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Southwest he was granted an early release. The judge sent him home to complete the remainder of his house arrest, while Meech is still waiting for his turn to be released. Big Meech, on the other hand, wasn't so fortunate when co-struck. He attempted to receive the same compassionate release that his brother had received, but the judge wasn't listening, and, despite Meech's poor health, they denied him and left him stuck. Behind bars in October 2024, Meech finally left prison after 20 long years, but it wasn't complete freedom. He was sent to a halfway house to serve out the remainder of his sentence under strict supervision. The problem is that, while the Feener brothers were incarcerated, BMF didn't simply disappear. Instead, they became cultural icons whose names endured through the streets, music, fashion, and countless interviews with rappers and hustlers. Honoring the legacy of the Black Mafia family, Big Meech's story became a pop culture phenomenon just 5 years after the brothers were snatched. It began in 2010 when journalist Mara Shalhoub published BMF. The rise and fall of Big Meech and the Black Mafia family, which had everyone talking and revealing the empire Meech had built. That same year, Rick Ross released his smash hit BMF Blowing Money Fast, which effectively turned Meech's name into a rap anthem, and praising the ostentatious, untouchable way of life for which he was renowned. From then on, the legend only grew in popularity. Fast forward to 2020, and the BMF's cultural influence 50 Cent collaborated with celebrities to release the BMF series, a television program that focused on the growth of the Black Mafia family. To make matters even more bizarre, Meech's own son, Lil Meech, made his acting debut in the show as his father. It was so successful that 50 followed up with an 8-hour documentary series in 2022. Money-losing BMF documentary. Then, in 2023, 50 wasn't finished. He revealed that the entire BMF cinematic universe was growing with 3 new spin-off shows and a 3rd season already in the works. The BMF story was bigger than ever before one photo changed everything. Shortly after Meech returned home in 2024, he connected with Rick Ross, and when that picture went viral, it immediately rekindled the old feud. Between 50 and Meech, 50 wasted no time in jumping online and accusing Meech of snitching. He even went so far as to say that the BMF show was over, but 50 wasn't finished talking trash. He also claimed to have actual documents that showed Meech had worked with the feds. The only problem was that some fans quickly pointed out that those same documents had been circulating for years and that there was no mention of Meech being a federal informant. This is where things get messy, even if Tammy Cows actually struck a deal with the feds that helped get Meech's sentence revoked, but that doesn't mean Meech was involved. If this had been genuine cooperation, Meech would have had to approve it, allowing Tammy to give the feds information to help him get a lower bid. However, if Meech was unaware of it or wasn't involved in what Tammy was doing behind the scenes, then this whole situation is more like a sneaky legal loophole than outright snitching. Now that 50C is out there acting as though it's true that Meech knew exactly what Tammy was up to and that Meech was feeding her the information she gave the feds, you have people like Terrence Gangsta Williams, who actually know Meech, saying that they don't even think Meech ever worked with the law. Now, it's your turn to voice your opinions. Why do you think 50 is so bent on using Meech as a snitch angle? And if this paperwork has been around for years, why didn't 50 have a problem C interrupts Meech's story when he creates the BMF series, but the second Meech connects with Rick Ross, so it's a complete problem? Please share your ideas in the comments section so you don't miss the next drop. The drama is far from ended, I promise. See you at the next one.